The official declaration of war from the Vordrigan hegemony arrived on a Tuesday, transmitted across the subspace boundary of Kepler's Veil. It wasn't a crackle of hostile static or a burst of encrypted data. It was a high-frequency resonance packet, blooming across the sensor arrays of the Terran and Defense Combine Third Fleet like a shard of obsidian dropping into a pond. It was precise, arrogant, and utterly devoid of ambiguity. On the command deck of the TDC Indomitable, Admiral Kalen Reed watched the translation scroll across the main holotank. The deck was dark, built for endurance, not comfort. The only light came from the soft glow consoles and the swirling, chaotic beauty of the veil itself, a stellar nursery of purple and crimson gas clouds that shimmered beyond the armored transparency. Reed was a man forged in the same way as his ship. Graying armor plating, systems that ran hot but never failed, and eyes that had seen too many stars go dark. He sipped his coffee, real, bitter, and black, a luxury he afforded himself before a crisis, and read the Vordrigan ultimatum aloud. His voice was a low rumble, like gravel shifting in a deep place. To the anomalous primates of Sector 7, designated Terra, by the authority of the Grand Arbiter Malachar, acting in accordance with the precepts of the First Throne, you are hereby charged with unharmonious expansion, chaotic resource allocation, and violation of the Cygnus Meridian Purity Pact. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Lena Hansen, let out a sound that was half snort, half choke. Unharmonious expansion. They're complaining about our noise. Keep reading, Lena, Reed said, his lips twitching in a phantom of a smile. The Vordrigan hegemony in its magnanimity offers terms. You will cease all unsanctioned FTL transit. You will dismantle the settlement at Odyssey, which encroaches upon our ancestral void. You will deliver your primary military command structure, designated Admiral Kalen Reed, to the Harbinger of Dawn for ritual internment and re-education. Ritual internment, Lena muttered, her fingers dancing across her console, mapping the Vordrigan fleet signatures emerging from the veil. Sounds kinky. It gets better, Reed continued, pointing to the final block of crystalline script. Failure to comply will result in the cleansing of your sector. We await your delegation at the appointed coordinates. We challenge you to a contest of wills to prove your species' right to exist in our cosmos. Honor demands we give you one cycle to accept this most generous clarification. The bridge was silent for a long moment, the only sound the faint thrum of the Indomitable's singularity core. Then from the communications pit, a junior officer, Ensign Thorne, spoke up, his voice tight with disbelief. Sir, are they serious? A contest of wills? They're challenging us to a, what? A starring contest, a formal duel. Reed finally allowed himself the chuckle. It wasn't a sound of humor. It was a sound of profound, weary recognition. It was the sound of a patient man who had just watched a child try to threaten a mountain. It was the sound that would have echoed across the entire Terran fleet had they been listening. Ensign, Reed said, turning to face the young man. The Vordrigans are old, unimaginably old. They carved their empire out of this galaxy when our ancestors were still figuring out if pointy sticks were better than sharp rocks. They move in straight lines. They believe in ritual. They believe their energy shields, forged from crystallized vacuum, are infallible. They believe their plasma lances, which burn with the heat of a small star, are the final word of the universe. He gestured to the holotank, where the Vordrigan fleet was now visible, a perfect geometric lattice of diamond-shaped vessels, shimmering with contained power. They were beautiful. They were terrible, and they were, in a way, artifacts. They believe, Reed continued, that war is a theorem, a debate, a formal exchange of overwhelming power until the weaker side concedes. They have never met an opponent who doesn't play by their rules. They have never met an opponent who sees a contest of wills and thinks, what a magnificent waste of time. He looked at Lena. The chuckle is over, Commander. What's their disposition? Lena's face hardened, the brief levity gone. 88 confirmed contacts, Admiral. 1 Harbinger-class dreadnought, that'll be Malachar's flagship. 12 Phalanx-class cruisers, 30 Shard-class destroyers. The rest are support and picket ships. There. Not joking, sir. That's enough firepower to glass Odyssey Station from orbit in under an hour. And us. The Third Fleet is assembled. The Indomitable, Agincourt, and Leonidas are the capital line. 20 Javelin-class destroyers, 40 Stiletto-class frigates, and the Hornet's Nest. Reed nodded. Odyssey Station. Population, 4.2 million souls, our primary refueling and repair depot for this quadrant, and the home of the 77th Experimental Fighter Wing. They're demanding we dismantle it, Lena said, her voice dripping with contempt. Just pack it up. They think we're like them, Reed said softly. They think we build things just to prove we can. They don't understand that Odyssey isn't just a place, it's ours. He toggled his command channel. Get me Commander Rostova. 400 kilometers away, docked in the chaotic, sprawling, vibrant mess of Odyssey Station, Commander Eva Echo Rostova was inverted. Her experimental Banshee-class interceptor, the Chekhov's gun, was locked into a diagnostic cradle, and she was hanging upside down from her harness, rewiring the inertial dampener relay herself. The cockpit smelled of ozone, sweat, and synthetic cinnamon from the ration bar she'd forgotten in her flight suit. If you cross-wire that Echo, a voice chirped from her console, you'll blink yourself directly into the station's fusion reactor, and maintenance will be very cross with me. Shut up, Bones, Eva muttered, wiping grease from her cheek with the back of her glove. Bones was the ship's onboard tactical AI, shackled by Terran protocols but possessing the personality of a sarcastic grandfather. I'm trying to bypass the safety protocols. The Vordrigans are coming, and I need this thing to turn on a femtosecond, not a half-second. The Banshee wasn't a normal fighter. It didn't fly in the traditional sense. It used a volatile experimental blink drive, a localized temporal distortion engine that allowed it to make instantaneous, sublight jumps of several kilometers. It was less a fighter and more a scalpel, designed to appear, strike, and vanish before an enemy's sensors could even register its presence. It was also notoriously trying to kill its pilots. Eva was the only one who had tamed it. Her personal comm chimed, "Rostova, bridge." She sighed, flipped herself upright in the cramped cockpit, and hit the receiver. "Echo here." Admiral Reed's face materialized on her secondary screen. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, which for him was normal. "Commander, you've seen the invitation." "The sparkly challenge from the glass monsters? Yeah, I saw it, Admiral. We all had a good laugh down in the mess. Unharmonious expansion. I think that's what my landlord said when I installed the new synthesizer." "Their fleet is at the Veil," Reed said, his voice cutting through her sarcasm. 88 hostiles, Dreadnought in the lead. They're blockading the jump gate. They're demanding we surrender Odyssey. Eva's posture changed. The lazy slouch vanished. She was a coiled spring, all nervous energy instantly focused into a diamond point. What? They're blockading us. Don't they know we live here?" "They know," Reed said. "They just don't care. They think we'll roll over. They think we'll see their power, their numbers, and do the logical thing. They think we're afraid." Eva looked past her console, through the cockpit glass, at the Indomitable hanging in the void. It was a beast of a ship, a blocky, utilitarian gray wedge of armor and engines, pockmarked with missile tubes and railgun turrets. It was ugly. It was functional. It was human. "So," Eva said, her knuckles turning white on her control yoke. "What's the plan, Admiral? Are we going to be harmonious?" "No, Commander, we're going to be loud." Reed's expression was grim. "The Vordrigans are expecting a formal response. They're expecting a diplomatic vessel. They're waiting for me to show up in a fancy shuttle and bend the knee." He paused, and a cold fire lit his eyes. "Instead, I'm sending you. The 77th is Operation Misfit. You are not to engage. I repeat, you are not to engage. This is a reconnaissance and statement run." "A statement run, sir." "The Vordrigans believe their shields are absolute. They believe their formations are unbreakable. They believe they own the void. I want you to take your squadron of ghosts and dance in their backyard. I want you to get in, scan their flagship, count the rivets on Malaker's hull, and get out. I want you to show them without firing a shot that their ancestral void has rats, and the rats have teeth." "Bones, warm up the blink drive," Eva whispered, her heart hammering. She looked back at Reed. "And the Chuckled part, sir." "That's for after," Reed said. "Right now, they're arrogant. When you get back, they'll be angry. Arrogance is brittle, Commander. Anger. Anger is sloppy. Your job is to make them angry." "Yes, sir," Eva grinned, a feral, sharp expression. "I'm excellent at making people angry. Echo Squadron launching in 5. She cut the channel and slammed the cockpit canopy shut. The seals hissed, and the dark space of the hangar bay was replaced by the vibrant HUD of the Chekhov's gun. "Bones," she said, firing up the main reactor. I know," the AI's voice replied, alarmingly calm. "Full power to the experimental drive that tries to disassemble us at a molecular level. What could possibly go wrong?" "We're going to go poke the dragon, Bones," Eva said, as her fighter was lifted onto the magnetic launch rail. Technically, the AI retorted, they are a silicon-based crystalline life form, so we are going to go, tap the geode. Whatever, just get us there fast. The magnetic catapult engaged, slamming Eva back into her crash couch. The Chekhov's gun shot out of Odyssey Station, a tiny, dark arrowhead against the backdrop of the massive human colony. She was joined by 11 other Banshee fighters, their forms flickering as their blink drives warmed up. They accelerated toward the Vordrigan fleet, a wall of crystalline light dominating the Kepler's veil. All call signs, Eva broadcast, her voice steady and clear. This is Echo, we're going in quiet, we're painters, not brawlers. Paint the Harbinger, get the shield frequencies, and be home in time for noodles. No heroes, no martyrs, we're just delivering the punchline. She gripped her controls, took a deep breath, and hit the drive. In one instant, the Banshee squadron was there. In the next, they were gone. They didn't fly. They blinked. And deep in the command center of the Harbinger of Dawn, a Vordrigan sensor adjunct tilted its multifaceted head, confused by the 12 microscopic, simultaneous energy readings that had just appeared inside their picket line and then vanished just as quickly. The arrogance of the Vordrigan hegemony was a mountain, and Admiral Reed had just sent the first tremor. The chuckle was about to die in their throats. The void inside the Vordrigan formation was supposed to be sterile. It was the sanctum, the sacred geometry of their fleet, where their cruisers and destroyers moved in perfect mathematical orbits around the Harbinger of Dawn. It was a space no enemy had ever penetrated, protected by overlapping shields and the absolute certainty of Vordrigan supremacy. Eva, Echo, Rostova's squadron shattered that certainty in 4 seconds. They blinked in not as a cohesive squadron, but as 12 individual points of spatial disruption. Eva's Banshee rematerialized 300 kilometers off the Harbinger's port bow. The Vordrigan dreadnought was magnificent. It was a mile-long shard of iridescent black crystal, humming with so much power that it distorted the starlight around it. It looked less like a machine and more like a geographic feature, a piece of the universe's core given form and malice. "Bones, paint it," Eva whispered, her hands flying across her console. Her fighter was cold running, venting no heat, showing no active energy signature. They were for now ghosts. "Painting is an understatement, Echo." The AI's voice was tight with data saturation. "I'm drowning. Their main shield frequency is oscillating. It's not one frequency, it's a chord, a harmonic resonance. That's why they're so tough. They don't block energy, they disperse it." "Voodoo, Jester, Spook, you're on the port flank. Get me scans of those plasma lances. Keep it cold," Eva ordered over the squadron comms. The other Banshees flickered, their drive cores whining, and jumped again, appearing like flashes of static on the Vordrigan's passive sensors. Aboard the Harbinger, Grand Arbiter Malachar stood on his dais. The bridge was a cavern, a perfect hexagon of polished obsidian. His Vordrigan crew, tall, slender beings whose crystalline skin reflected the console light, worked in absolute silence. Malachar was 8 feet tall, his form encased in silver-white ceremonial armor, his face a mask of serene, timeless arrogance. "The Terrans have not responded," he spoke, his voice a resonant, telepathic chime that echoed in the minds of his crew. "They are, considering this is expected of a chaotic species, they must process their fear." His tactical adjunct, Krylax, shifted, a motion of crystalline discomfort. "Arbiter, we have anomalies, subspace distortions, very small within the formation." Malachar did not turn. "Insects, data artifacts from the veil, our shields are absolute, the void is pure." "Arbiter," Krylax persisted, his chime gaining an edge of alarm. "The anomalies are moving, they just passed Destroyer Shard of Truth. Arbiter, they are matching our fleet's vector." Malachar turned, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Show me." The main holo display, which had been showing a pristine geometric representation of his fleet, flickered. Krylax highlighted 12 nothings. They were blank spots, voids in the sensor data, ghosts in the machine. "They are here," Krylax chimed, horrified. "They are inside the sanctum." Malachar's serenity cracked. It was a hairline fracture, but it was there. "Impossible. No FTL drive can navigate a gravity well this complex. No engine can bypass the shield harmonics. Activate active pulse scanners. Find them." In Eva's cockpit, a klaxon screamed. "Whoop, whoop, there it is," Bones shouted. "They're pinging us active pulse. We're lit up like a holiday tree." "All Banshees break and scatter," Eva yelled, slamming her fist onto the blink drive activator. Plan Misfit is a go. Get your data and get out. Last one home buys the synth beer. The void erupted. The Vordrigans, expecting a formal fleet battle, had their point defense systems tuned for frigates and missiles, not for targets that moved faster than light. Eva's Banshee jumped. She appeared 1,000 kilometers above the Harbinger, inverted. She saw the Vordrigan destroyers unleash a volley of point defense lasers, at the empty space she had occupied a millisecond before. Jester, you're hot, break left. I can't, Echo, they've got a lock. Wait, no they don't. Jester's fighter blinked through the Vordrigan laser fire, the beams converging on nothing. This is voodoo, another pilot panted. I'm inside the engine housing of a cruiser. It's beautiful in here. Get out of there, voodoo, Eva commanded, executing another blind jump, this time ending up directly under the Harbinger. She was so close she could see the microfractures in its crystalline hull. Bones got that frequency. I've got the whole goddamn symphony, Echo, sending the data packet to the Indomitable. Sent. Now can we please leave the party? These hosts are rude. On the Harbinger's bridge, Malachar watched in frozen disbelief. His tactical display was a nightmare of quantum impossibility. The 12 anomalies were behaving like concepts. They were appearing, firing low-energy sensor tags, the humans painting his ships and vanishing. His automated turrets were firing at ghosts, lagging by whole seconds. They are mocking us. Malachar's telepathic voice was no longer a chime. It was a shriek of shattering crystal. All ships, fire proximity-fused plasma, saturate the void, burn these, vermin, out of our sky. The Vordrigan fleet, which had been a stately, poised collection of ships, broke formation. The Phalanx-class cruisers turned their main guns inward and unleashed torrents of white-hot plasma, not at targets, but at areas. Shields, shields, Eva screamed as a wave of plasma washed over the space she was about to jump to. Her console sparked. Drive is overheating, Bones warned. The temporal distortion is fighting the plasma flux. We need to cool down or we're jumping into soup. No time, we're going. Full burn, get us to the rally point. Eva's squadron was in hell. The safe, sterile void had become a shooting gallery where the walls themselves were on fire. Echo, spooks hit. Jester's voice was tight with panic. His blink drive, oh God, it's fissioning. Eva watched on her monitor as the spook's Banshee, caught by the edge of a plasma blast, began to flicker, not in and out of space, but in and out of reality. The ship distorted, stretched, and then imploded, vanishing in a tiny, silent pop of quantum disruption, leaving nothing behind. Spook is gone, Eva said, her voice dangerously calm. The grief was a cold stone in her gut, but she couldn't touch it, not yet. All Banshees form on me, we're doing the needle. Emergency exit now. The needle, Jester asked. That's not possible, Echo, that's a simulator trick. The needle, Eva repeated, is how we go home. Link your drives to mine, I have the con. She lined up her fighter, not at the black, safe void of open space, but at the center of the Vordrigan dreadnought. Bones, she said. This is clinically insane, the AI stated flatly. The Harbinger's singularity core is emitting a gravity shadow that will tear us apart if we mistime this by a nanosecond. Also, its shields are at full power. The scans, Bones, the shield harmonics. You said it disperses energy, right? Like a chord. Yes, a harmonic resonance. Why? What happens, Eva said, her fingers flying, if you play a bad note? She diverted power from her weapons, not that she had any, to her sensor array. She began broadcasting a tight, chaotic beam of multi-frequency static directly at the Harbinger's shield. On Malachar's bridge, a deafening, psychic screech filled the air. The Vordrigan crew recoiled, their crystalline bodies vibrating. What is that noise? Malachar roared. It is the Terran anomaly arbiter, Krylax shrieked. It is, broadcasting at us, it's cacophony, it's disrupting the shield harmony. Eva's Banshee accelerated. I'm not trying to break the shield, Bones, I'm just trying to make it flinch. The Harbinger's massive shield, which had been a smooth, iridescent bubble, rippled. It warped. For a single infinitesimal moment, the harmonic chord stuttered, creating a dead note in the shield's perfection. Now Bones thread the needle. Eva's Banshee, followed by the 10 remaining fighters, didn't blink. They engaged their main thrusters at full power and flew, a stupid, primitive, brutish maneuver, straight at the Harbinger. They hit the shield at the exact point of the dead note. They didn't break through, they were squeezed through. Eva's vision went white. The G-forces were unimaginable. Her cockpit screamed as the temporal distortion of her drive fought the spatial distortion of the Vordrigan shield. She felt, for one agonizing second, like she was everywhere and nowhere, her atoms spread across the universe. And then they were through. They shot past the Harbinger's hull, rocketing out the other side of the Vordrigan formation, trailing ionized plasma and pure, dumb luck. Status, Eva gasped, fighting the controls as her ship stabilized. Jester good, Voodoo good 947, all green, we're all here, Echo. 11, Eva said, correcting him, spooks gone. Silence reigned on the comms, broken only by the sound of ragged breathing. They were clear, they were alive, and they were streaking back toward the Indomitable, the Vordrigan fleet, a chaotic, furious mess behind them. Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Reed watched the data packet from Eva's squadron resolve on the holotank. It was perfect. Shield frequencies, power levels, armor composition, plasma temperatures. It was everything. Lena Hansen looked at him, her face pale. Sir, the Vordrigan fleet is in disarray. They are firing on empty space there, panicked. Reed stared at the approaching icons of the Banshee squadron. 11, not 12. His face tightened, the cost of admission. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. Operation Misfit is complete, we have the data. He looked at the Vordrigan fleet, so powerful, so arrogant, and now so utterly, embarrassingly exposed. They had been unharmoniously expanded upon. They had been touched. Their ancestral void had been violated by a handful of pilots in experimental ships. Commander Hansen, Reed said, his voice cold as the void. We have their chord. I want you to find the bad note Commander Rostova just played, and I want you to compose a symphony. Sir. Load the limpet drone swarm. All Javelin destroyers prepare to fire kinetic slugs. Agincourt Leonidas, bring your spinal mass drivers online. Target the Harbinger. The time for chuckling was over. The time for the formal challenge was over. Grand Arbiter Malachar, Reed said, opening a channel to the Vordrigan flagship. This is Admiral Kalen Reed of the Terran Defense Combine. We have received your clarification. Your terms are unacceptable. On the Harbinger, Malachar, shaking with a cold, crystalline fury he had never known, saw the human flagship advancing. The entire Terran fleet was advancing. They were not surrendering. They were not negotiating. They were attacking. You dare, Malachar's voice boomed across the channel, no longer a chime but a roar. You chaotic primitives, you will be erased. Reed's voice was calm. You came here to contest our will, Arbiter. Consider it contested. He cut the channel. All ships engage. The Terran Third Fleet, ugly, practical, and utterly furious, accelerated. The Vordrigans, masters of the formal duel, were about to learn what a real, chaotic human brawl looked like. The conflict had begun. The battle for Kepler's Veil began not with a thunderous roar, but with a swarm. The Vordrigans, reforming their elegant, geometric lattice, prepared to meet the Terran capital ships with overwhelming, coordinated energy. They expected a stately exchange of broadsides. Admiral Reed gave them a riot. Launch limpets, Reed ordered, his voice flat. From the Stiletto-class frigates darting at the front of the Terran line, clouds of dark, metallic objects blossomed. They weren't missiles. They had no warheads, no significant propulsion. They were just drones, thousands of them. On the Harbinger's bridge, Malachar watched the approaching weapon deployment with contempt. Kinetic chaff, they seek to blind our sensors, a child's tactic. His point defense lasers, which had failed so spectacularly against the Banshees, now had easy targets. They lanced out, vaporizing hundreds of the drones. But thousands more got through. They didn't explode. They clung. They attached themselves to the Vordrigan cruisers and destroyers, magnetic clamps biting into the crystalline hulls. They are pests, Krylax, the second-in-command, reported, his telepathic chime laced with disgust. They attach but do no damage. Ignore them, Malachar commanded. Focus fire on the Terran lead vessels, show them the cost of their insolence. The Phalanx-class cruisers unleashed their primary weapons. Lances of pure, white-hot plasma, bright as suns, crossed the void. Evasive maneuvers, Reed snapped. The Terran fleet scattered. There was no formation. They moved like a shoal of panicked fish, each ship's A-assisted thrusters finding a unique, chaotic vector. The Vordragon's precision fire, calculated to hit a ship moving in a predictable line, missed entirely, burning harmlessly through empty space. They do not hold the line, Krylax stammered. It is undignified. It's effective, Reed muttered on his own bridge. Commander Hansen, play our song. Lena's fingers flew, transmitting the harmonic distortion code, activating limpets. Now. Across the Vordragon fleet, the pests came alive. They didn't explode. They vibrated. Each one, tuned by Bones' captured data, began to emit a resonant frequency. The bad note Eva had discovered, amplified 1,000 times. The Vordragons were crystalline. Their ships were, quite literally, grown from massive, resonant crystals. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The first Vordragon destroyer, the Shard of Truth, suddenly twitched. Then it began to resonate, a deep structural hum that its crew could feel in their silicon bones. The hum became a shriek. On Malakar's view screen, the Shard of Truth didn't explode. It shattered. Like a trillion-ton wineglass struck by the perfect note, it disintegrated, collapsing into a cloud of glittering, iridescent dust and frozen Vordragon bodies. A second destroyer, then a third, followed. The Vordragon crews were sent into psychic shock, their minds, so attuned to their ships, unable to comprehend the sound that was killing them. "What is this sorcery?" Malakar roared, recoiling from the display. "This," Reed said to his bridge, "is a physics lesson. Now, while they're confused, javelins fire at will. Indomitable target that lead cruiser, spinal mass driver, full power." The Indomitable shuddered as its main weapon, a kilometer-long magnetic accelerator, fired. It wasn't an energy beam. It was a 20-ton tungsten rod, machined to a fine point, accelerated to 0.97 the speed of light. The Vordragon cruiser, its shield still flickering from the harmonic distortion, never saw it. The Vordragon shield was designed to disperse energy. It was not designed to stop a rock traveling at relativistic speeds. The tungsten slug hit the cruiser. There was no explosion, no flash. The ship was just gone. The rod passed through it from bow to stern in less than a microsecond, gutting it, and continued into the void, a silent, hypervelocity messenger of kinetic death. The cruiser, its systems vaporized, split in two, its dying reactor cores finally blooming into a silent plasma fire. The Vordragon fleet, so perfect, so arrogant, was being dismantled by noise and bullets. Eva Rostova, her Banshee docked and undergoing emergency repairs on the Indomitable, stood on the observation deck, watching the battle unfold. Her heart ached for Spook, but a cold, fierce pride swelled in her chest. "We did this," she thought. "Our data, our run." "It's beautiful," a voice said next to her. It was Jester, his real name Lieutenant Samir Jane. His arm was in a light cast from the G-force spike. "They don't know what to do. They're trying to fight a duel, and the Admiral just mugged them." "They'll adapt," Eva said, her voice tight. "They're old, not stupid. They'll figure out the resonance. They'll—" "God, Jester, look." She pointed. The Vordragon fleet was changing. Malakar, realizing his destroyers were vulnerable, had ordered them back. His heavier phalanx cruisers were advancing, but they were doing something new. They were emitting a low-frequency field from their bows. "What is that?" Jester murmured. On the bridge, Lena Hansen's console blared. "Sir, new energy reading. The cruisers are generating." A stasis field, a localized temporal distortion. The first Terran frigate, the Stiletto-class Rapier, hit the field. It didn't explode, it just slowed. On the main screen, Reed watched, his blood running cold. The Rapier's engine trail, which had been a brilliant blue-white, redshifted, stretching out, becoming a dull, lazy red. The ship itself seemed to freeze, its running lights dimming, its kinetic velocity bleeding away, trapped in a bubble of slow time. "It's frozen," Ensign Thorne whispered, horrified. "They're trapping them," Lena yelled. "The Vordragons are creating pockets of slowed time." One by one, the nimble Terran frigates, the heroes of the first charge, were being caught. The Vordragon cruisers advanced like cosmic fishermen, casting nets of temporal energy, capturing the Terran shoal ship by ship. "All destroyers fall back. Get out of those fields," Reed commanded. But it was too late. The Vordragons were adapting. They were using their superior, ancient technology to control the battlefield. The human fleet, which had relied on speed and chaos, was being sectioned off. The Vordragons were hurting them. They're containing us," Jester said, his voice sick. He watched as his own frigate, the Spatha, where he'd served before the Banshee program, was caught. It hung in the void, a ghost ship, its crew alive but frozen, helpless. "Admiral," Eva said, hitting her personal comm to the bridge. "Let me go. Let the 77th go back out. We can outblink those fields. We can get inside them." "Negative, Commander," Reed's voice was granite. "Your ships are still under repair, and we don't know what those fields do to a blink drive. Stand down." "But, sir, we're being—" "Stand down." The tide of the battle had turned. The human punch had landed, but the Vordrigan, the ancient, massive heavyweight, had just shaken it off. And now it was angry. Malachar watched the human fleet being systematically trapped. The chaos was being replaced by order, his order. "Their primitive tricks are exhausted," he chimed, his telepathic voice radiating cold satisfaction. "They are fast, yes, but they are trapped. Now they will learn the true meaning of a contest of wills." He turned his attention from the diminishing fleet battle to the true prize, the one that had insulted him, Odyssey Station. "Krylax," Malachar ordered. "The Harbinger is no longer needed in this skirmish. The cruisers will suffice. Bring us about, target the Terran colony." The massive, mile-long dreadnought, which had been absorbing potshots from the Indomitable on its still impenetrable shields, began to turn. Its movement was slow, majestic, and utterly unstoppable. On the Indomitable, Reed's blood turned to ice. He's ignoring us. He's going for the station." "Sir," Lena's console lit up with a new, terrifying signature. "The Harbinger. He's diverting power from his main drive. He's shunting it to— I don't recognize this array, sir. It's on the ventral side. The power buildup is catastrophic." "It's not a ship-to-ship weapon," Reed realized, his voice a horrified whisper. "It's a planetary weapon, a world breaker." The Harbinger of Dawn aligned itself. Its target, 4.2 million civilians. Malachar opened a channel, his image appearing on Reed's main screen. The Vordrigan was serene once more. His arrogance had returned tenfold. "Admiral Kalen Reed, your chaotic display is ended, your fleet is contained, your resilience is noted. It is, however, irrelevant. You have failed the contest. I will now cleanse this system of your unharmonious presence, starting with the source of the infection." The ventral side of the Harbinger began to glow, a terrifying, sickly green light. "You have 1 minute, Primate," Malachar chimed. "Surrender your fleet, surrender yourself, and I may spare the lives of your civilians. Their re-education will be thorough." Reed looked at the screen. He saw the Harbinger charging its weapon. He saw his frigates, frozen in time, helpless. He saw the Indomitable, its armor scarred, its main gun recharging but useless against the dreadnought's shields. He looked at Lena, at Thorn, at the faces of his crew. Defeat was a cold, bitter taste in his mouth. They had been so clever, they had been so human, and it wasn't enough. "Admiral," Lena's voice was shaking. "What are your orders?" Reed stared at Malachar's smug, crystalline face. The arrogance, the certainty. The Vordrigan thought he had won. He thought he had presented an unwinnable scenario. He thought he was in control. A slow, cold smile spread across Kalen Reed's face. It was not a smile of mirth. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed the enemy's entire rulebook and a lit match. "Commander Rostova," Reed said over the private comm, his voice suddenly alive. "Sir," Eva replied, her hand already on the hatch of her cockpit. "I have a new needle for you to thread. Get your squadron ready. Launch in 90 seconds. "Ready for what, sir?" Reed looked at the Harbinger on his screen. "Malachar just made a mistake. He thinks he's a fortress. He's not. He's a target." He turned to his helm officer. "Helm, all power to main engines. Bring the Indomitable about. New course." "Sir, course." "Right down his throat," Reed ordered, his voice ringing with a terrifying, sudden joy. "All ships, prepare for Operation Misfit. Full burn. We're going to make a very loud noise." The Indomitable, the battered, scarred flagship of the Terran Third Fleet, turned its bow directly at the Vordrigan dreadnought. Its engines flared, not with blue-white efficiency, but with a screaming, suicidal, white-hot fury. It was accelerating to ramming speed. On the Harbinger, Malachar watched, his serenity finally shattering into a million pieces of disbelief. They are ramming us. Illogical madness." "Here we come, you arrogant bastard," Reed whispered. The cliffhanger was not whether they would die, it was how many they would take with them. The Indomitable was a 400,000-ton battering ram, a monument to human spite hurled across the void. Alarms shrieked across the bridge, a chorus of imminent destruction. The ship's structure groaned, its inertial dampeners screaming as they tried to compensate for the suicidal acceleration. "Helm steady as she goes," Admiral Reed commanded, his knuckles white on the arms of his command chair. He was locked in, rigid, as the G-forces pressed him deep into the padding. "Steady, sir," the helm officer grunted, his face a mask of strain. "We're on course. Impact with the Harbinger in T-minus 70 seconds." The Vordrigan dreadnought, which had been contemptuously charging its world breaker, was suddenly forced to react. Malachar, in a fit of rage and disbelief, redirected his plasma lances. Beams of incandescent energy, designed to melt cruisers, slammed into the Indomitable's forward shielding. "Shields at 40%, Lena Hansen shouted over the din. 30, forward armor is boiling, decks 5 through 9 are reporting hull breaches. Reroute auxiliary power to the forward shields. Let the aft armor slag," Reed ordered. "We only need to get there." The Indomitable was dying. It was a comet burning itself up as it plunged toward its target, but it was not slowing down. Aboard the Harbinger, the scene was one of chaos. Malachar had never, in 5 centuries of command, faced an opponent who embraced mutual annihilation with such enthusiasm. He is primitive," Malachar shrieked, his telepathic voice fracturing. "He would destroy his own command ship, his vessel spirit, for what? A symbolic gesture of defiance." Arbiter, Krylax, his second-in-command, pointed at the tactical display, his crystalline form vibrating with a new, dawning horror. "Arbiter, their energy signatures, the Terran flagship. Its weapons are cold." Malachar paused. Krylax was right. The Indomitable's spinal mass driver was offline. Its missile ports were sealed. Its railgun batteries were silent. "They are not priming their weapons." Krylax's chime was faint with confusion. "They are flaring their main engines, flaring them beyond all safety protocols. The reactor. It's on the verge of catastrophic overload." Malachar's multifaceted eyes widened. It wasn't a ram. It was a bomb. A 400,000-ton plasma bomb delivered by a dead man. "All point defense, all forward batteries, destroy that ship, do not let it touch us," Malachar screamed. The Harbinger unleashed hell. A wall of energy and kinetic projectiles met the Indomitable. The Terran flagship's forward armor peeled away in molten sheets. The bridge lights flickered, died, and came back on under emergency power. 20 seconds to impact," the helm shouted, his console exploding in a shower of sparks. He was blind, flying on instruments and faith. "They're too late," Reed whispered, watching the wall of Vordrigan crystal fill his viewport. "They think we're a spear. They think we're aiming for their heart." He looked at Lena. "Now, Commander, tell Echo now." "Banshee Squadron, this is Indomitable. Misfit is a go. Misfit is a go. Good luck, Echo." Lena's voice crackled over the comms, choked with static and emotion. "Copy that, Indomitable," Eva Rostova replied, her voice an icy calm. She and the 10 remaining Banshees were sitting in the shadow of Odyssey Station, their engines cold. "It's been an honor, Admiral." "The honor is ours, Commander," Reed's voice replied, faint and distant. "Give 'em hell." The channel died. "You heard the man, 77th, Eva said, her hands gripping her yoke. "The Indomitable is the distraction. They're the Matador's cape. With a sword, Jester, you're on my wing." "Always Echo," Samir's voice came back, steady. "The Harbinger thinks the threat is in front of him. All his shields are forward. All his weapons are forward. He's braced for impact." Eva's eyes narrowed, tracking the sensor data. "He's forgotten what's underneath him." She was looking at the glow. The sickly, terrifying green glow of the World Breaker array, still charging, still aimed at the defenseless station. "Bones," Eva said. "Plot a sequential blink right into the emitter array." "Echo, the energy readings from that array are obscene," the AI protested. "It's not just plasma, it's gravitonic, it's warping spacetime right now. If we blink into that, we won't just be vaporized, we'll be unwritten." "The Indomitable is blowing itself to kingdom come to buy us 10 seconds, Bones," Eva snapped. "They're not ramming, they're slingshotting." On the main display, the Indomitable, now just 10 seconds from impact, did the impossible. Its portside maneuvering thrusters fired, a desperate full-power burn. Instead of hitting the Harbinger head-on, the Terran flagship veered. It was using the Dreadnought's own massive gravity well as a pivot point. It was a gravitational slingshot maneuver, executed at point-blank range, at suicidal velocity. The Indomitable scraped under the Harbinger's bow, close enough for the crew to see the crystalline architecture of the enemy ship. The Indomitable's overloaded engines, flared to maximum, washed the Harbinger's ventral hull with a torrent of raw plasma and radiation. Malacher, braced for an impact that never came, was thrown from his dais. The Harbinger shuddered, its sensors blinded by the engine wash. It missed, Krylax chimed, scrambling to his feet. It didn't miss, Malacher whispered, seeing the tactical plot. The Indomitable was now behind him, crippled, venting atmosphere, its engines dead. But it had successfully passed him. And in its wake, in the shadow of its engine flare, came the Banshees. Now 77th, go, 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 Eva screamed. The 10 Banshees, hidden in the sensor chaos of the flagship's flyby, blinked. They appeared inside the massive, complex superstructure of the World Breaker Array. It was a cathedral of glowing green crystal, energy arcing between focusing lenses the size of skyscrapers. "We're in," Jester yelled. "My sensors are, dear God, echo the power." "Don't look, deploy payload," Eva commanded. "We're not here to fight, we're here to be vandals." The payloads weren't missiles. They were things. Ripped from decommissioned Terran frigates, they were the most unstable, dangerous, and chaotic pieces of technology humanity had ever built. They were raw jump drive cores. The Vordrigans didn't use jump drives. They used stable, predictable warp gates. They didn't understand the sheer, uncontrolled violence of forcing a hole in reality. "Payloads deployed," Voodoo reported. "We're planting them on the primary emitters." "Good, now get." "Arbiter," Krylax shrieked, his telepathic voice cracking with absolute terror. "The anomalies, the ghosts, they are inside the World Breaker Array, and they've left. Objects." Malacher's serene arrogance was gone, replaced by a primal, visceral fear. He knew what Terran FTL drives were. He had dismissed them as unharmonious and suicidally unstable. "Activate the array," Malacher screamed. Fire it now, purge the emitters, vaporize them." "Sir," Lena yelled on the Indomitable's bridge, which was now dark, running on flickering emergency lights. He's firing at the station." Reed grabbed his console. "Echo, get out, he's firing the gun." "Too late," Eva shouted. She watched the primary emitter begin to glow, the green light turning to a blinding white. "It's arming, we can't blink. The distortion field is too strong." They were trapped inside a doomsday weapon with their doomsday weapons. "Jester, Voodoo, all of you," Eva said, her voice suddenly calm. "It's been a ride." "We're not done, Echo," Jester's voice came back tight. "If we can't get out, we can sure as hell make sure this gun never fires." "You're right," Eva said. She looked at her console. At the payloads they had attached to the emitters, then she looked at her own drive core. "Bones," she said. "I've got a new idea, forget the payloads. Link my core to the Vordrigan emitter right now." "Echo, that won't just detonate, that will create a recursive FTL event. It will feed your jump energy into his weaponized temporal field, the feedback loop." "I know," Eva said, "do it." "Admiral," Reed's voice was a whisper on the comm. "Get out." "Negative, sir," Eva said, her fingers flying, linking her blink drive to the alien machine. "But tell my landlord the unharmonious expansion is paid in full." She looked at the white light filling her cockpit. "Jester, get the others." "No, Echo," Jester said. He and the other 9 Banshees had formed a circle around her. "We're the 77th. We fly together, we die together." "Oh, you magnificent, stupid bastards," Eva wept, a single tear cutting a path through the grease on her cheek. "All right, on my mark, detonate everything." On the Indomitable, Reed watched the Harbinger glow. The World Breaker was about to fire. Odyssey Station was about to die. And then it backfired. It wasn't an explosion, it was an unthing. The 10 jump cores, combined with Eva's overloaded blink drive, detonated inside the arming Vordrigan weapon. The Vordrigan's own temporal stasis field collided with 10 simultaneous, unstable ruptures in space-time. A wave of wrongness pulsed from the Harbinger. It was not light, it was not energy, it was a wave of pure temporal static. The World Breaker Array convulsed. The green energy folded in on itself, consuming the ventral side of the dreadnought. Malacher screamed as a wave of raw, displaced time washed over his bridge. His console shattered not from force but from age, turning to dust in a fraction of a second. crystalline shards, suddenly ancient and brittle, embedded in his face. The Vordrigan fleet was momentarily blinded and deafened by the psychic backlash. The Harbinger didn't explode. It lurched, crippled, a massive, gaping wound of corrupted spacetime sizzling on its underside. The Worldbreaker was gone, replaced by a permanent, simmering rift. And the Banshee squadron was gone, all of them, consumed by the event they had created. On the Indomitable's bridge, silence. The Harbinger was still there, but it was wounded, mortally. Reed stared at the empty space where the 77th had been. "Status," he breathed. The Worldbreaker is offline, sir," Lena reported, her voice hollow. "The Harbinger is crippled, the Vordrigan cruisers, they're holding position there, confused." The turning point had been reached. They had survived. They had cut the head off the snake, but the cost. Reed looked at the Vordrigan fleet, now leaderless, their flagship a ruin. And he looked at Krylax, the second in command, whose cruiser was now taking tactical command of the Vordrigan formation. Krylax wasn't advancing. He wasn't retreating. He was stalling. He was afraid. "They've broken," Reed said. "The Arrogance, it's broken." But then the Harbinger's icon flashed red. "Sir," Thorne yelled, "the Dreadnought, it's venting its main core. Malaker's still alive, and he's redirecting all power to his forward lances, sir. He's ignoring his fleet. He's ignoring his own survival. He's aiming at us." The Indomitable was dead in the water. Its engines were slag. It was a sitting duck. And the full, dying, spiteful rage of a Vordrigan Grand Arbiter was about to descend upon it. The void was still holding its breath. The Indomitable drifted, a carcass of a ship, its internal lights flickering, its hull breathing atmosphere into the vacuum. On the bridge, Admiral Reed sat in the darkness, lit only by the red glow of emergency systems. Opposite him, the Harbinger was a wounded beast, a gaping, sizzling temporal wound where its superweapon had been. But it was a beast that still had claws. Its forward-facing plasma lances, the ones designed to duel with battleships, were glowing. They were drinking the last dregs of the Dreadnought's main reactor. Malaker was bypassing every safety, every protocol, for one last, spiteful shot. "He's not even trying to save his ship," Lena Hansen whispered, her voice trembling. "He's just trying to kill us." "Time to impact?" Reed asked, his voice rough. "He's at maximum charge. He'll fire in." 30 seconds, sir," Lena replied. We have no shields, no engines. Our armor is slag. We're dead," Reed finished. He looked at the faces of his bridge crew. They were terrified, but they were there. Not one had left their post. "It was a good fight, people." He closed his eyes, thinking of Eva, of Jester, of Spook. They had bought the fleet a victory, only for the flagship to be executed at the end. The irony was as bitter as his first cup of coffee. "Wait," Ensign Thorne, his console sputtering, leaned forward. "Sir, I'm getting a signal, a Terran signal. It's not possible." "What is it, Ensign?" Reed said, his eyes snapping open. It's a Banshee drive signature, sir. A single one. It's inside the temporal rift on the Harbinger." Reed stared at the tactical plot. A single, flickering, intermittent blue icon. It was unstable, it was weak, but it was there. "Eva," Reed breathed. Eva Rostova was screaming. Her cockpit was a kaleidoscope of impossible colors, her body stretched and compressed by temporal forces. She wasn't in space. She was between it. The combined detonation of the jump cores and the Worldbreaker had torn a hole, and she hadn't been consumed. She'd been trapped. Bones, where are we?" she yelled, her voice raw. Validating. The AI's voice crackled, distorted, as if coming from a vast distance. "Echo, my temporal sensors are compromised. We are in a state of flux. The 77th, they are gone, Echo. Their cores detonated. Ours fused with the Vordrigan emitter. We are the rupture." "What?" Eva tried to move, but her controls were dead. Outside her cockpit, she saw not stars, but memories. She saw the Indomitable as it was being built. She saw Malaker receiving his command. She saw her own father teaching her to fly. The rift was a sink pulling in time itself. The detonation," Bones stuttered. It spared us. By anchoring us, we are a temporal singularity, Echo. I am detecting. The Harbinger, it is still functional." Eva's vision cleared for a moment. Through the swirling, purple-green non-space, she saw the Vordrigan Dreadnought, and she saw its lances charging, and she saw its target. The Indomitable, crippled, helpless. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't after all that. No." We cannot move, Echo, Bones said, his voice fatting. Our drive, it is the anchor. We are stuck. If we're the anchor, Bones, what happens if we pull? Eva grabbed the one control that was still lit. It wasn't a thruster. It wasn't a weapon. It was the manual blink drive core purge. The one red-handled lever they told you never to touch, because it would destabilize the drive and rip the ship apart. Bones, I'm going to overload the core right here, right now, if we're fused to this wound. Then we're going to rip it open. Echo, that won't just be an explosion, that will be an event, the feedback. It will consume everything. They're waiting for us, Eva snarled, her hand tightening on the lever. Jester, Spook, the Admiral, they're all waiting. I'm not going to let them down. She thought of Reed's dry chuckle. She thought of the Vordrigan arrogance. Hey, Malachar, she whispered as if the Arbiter could hear her. You wanted a contest of wills, this is mine. She yanked the lever. On the Harbinger, Malachar, bleeding from a dozen cuts, his crystalline skin cracked and dull, raised his hand to give the final order. Fire. The Vordrigan lances discharged. A torrent of pure white plasma, enough to disintegrate the Indomitable 100 times over, screamed across the void. On the Indomitable, the bridge crew watched their death approach. And then it stopped. The lances of plasma, just meters from the Indomitable's hull, froze. They hung in space, a brilliant, terrifying sculpture of arrested energy. What? Reed whispered. A pulse washed over the battlefield, a silent, visible wave of distortion. It emanated from the temporal wound on the Harbinger. Sir, Lena's voice was filled with a terrifying awe. The Singularity Echo's ship, it's detonating. On the Harbinger, Malachar watched his plasma lances freeze. He stared, uncomprehending. Then he looked at his own hand. It was aging. He watched in horrified silence as his smooth, crystalline skin began to pit. Cracks formed. His hand, in the space of a second, became brittle, ancient. It crumbled into gray dust. No, he chimed, a sound of pure terror. The pulse that Eva had unleashed was not one of energy. It was one of time. She hadn't just destroyed the rupture, she had weaponized it. By overloading her core inside the temporal flux, she had forced the Singularity to equalize. And it was equalizing by spending its stored time, all at once, across the entire Vordrigan fleet. The climax of the battle was not a flash of light. It was a wave of dust. The Vordrigan cruisers, the ones that had been so perfectly holding the Terran frigates in stasis, were the first to go. Their shields, which had been tuned to energy, had no defense against entropy. The crystalline hulls tarnished. They went from iridescent black to a dull, corroded gray. Cracks raced across their surfaces. Their engines guttered and died. Their internal lights faded. In the space of 5 seconds, the entire Vordrigan fleet, save for the Harbinger, aged 10 million years. They became derelicts, tombs. Their stasis fields failed, and the Terran frigates, the Rapier, the Spatha, were suddenly free, floating unharmed amid a graveyard of ancient, dead ships. But the Harbinger was at the epicenter. Malachar watched the wave of dust sweep over his bridge. Krylax, his second-in-command, turned to look at him, his multifaceted eyes wide with terror before his entire body simply disintegrated. The Harbinger of Dawn, the pride of the hegemony, the invincible dreadnought, collapsed. Its crystalline structure, brittle with millennia of false age, could no longer support its own mass. It crumbled. It fell apart not in an explosion, but in a silent, massive, catastrophic structural failure. The last thing Malachar saw was the face of Eva Rostova burning in his mind's eye, a ghost, a human. Laughing, then he and his ship were dust. On the Indomitable, the frozen plasma lances, their energy source long, since turned to ancient history, dissipated, showering the flagship's hull in harmless, glittering particles. The bridge was silent. Reed stared at the tactical display. The Vordrigan fleet, all 88 ships, were gone. In their place was a massive, drifting field of corroded, ancient debris, a graveyard. And the single blue icon of the Banshee Chekhov's gun was also gone. Status, Reed finally managed to say. Lena Hansen was openly weeping, tears tracking through the grime on her face. All Vordrigan signatures are gone, sir, their artifacts. The temporal wave is dissipating. The Stiletto-class frigates, they're coming back online, they're reporting. No casualties, just very confused. The Indomitable was crippled. The Third Fleet was shattered. The 77th Experimental Fighter Wing was annihilated. But they had won. Reed leaned his head back against his command chair. He felt the weight of every lost pilot, every sacrificed soul, settle on him. He felt the crushing, agonizing weight of Eva Rostova's final, impossible act. "Odyssey Station?" he asked. "Untouched, sir, completely untouched." Kalen Reed closed his eyes. The chuckle from that morning, a lifetime ago, felt like a betrayal. They had chuckled at the Vordrigan's arrogance, but they had never, ever imagined the price of proving it wrong. The war was over, the battle was won. And the silence in the void was the loudest sound he had ever heard. The silence that followed the event was heavier than armor plating. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the only sounds were the slow hiss of emergency life support and the quiet, choked sobs of Ensign Thorne at his console. Admiral Reed sat unmoving, his gaze fixed on the holotank, where the red icons of the Vordrigan fleet had been replaced by a sprawling cloud of gray, inert symbols. A graveyard. "They're just gone," Lena Hansen said, her voice hollow, breaking the quiet. She wiped her face with a grimy sleeve. "Not destroyed, ended like a book slammed shut." Reed nodded slowly. His body ached. His mind ached more. He thought of Eva's last transmission. "Tell my landlord the unharmonious expansion is paid in full." A joke right up to the end. A stupid, defiant, purely human joke. "Get me a damage report," Reed said, his voice a low rasp. "Fleet-wide, prioritize the frigates that were in stasis. I want to know they're all right." "Aye, sir," Lena said, her fingers moving over her console, her professionalism a shield against the shock. "Receiving. Spatha reports all green, Rapier all green. They're reporting they're locked and loaded, sir, awaiting orders. They don't even know it's over. For them it's been milliseconds." "And the Indomitable?" "We're alive, Admiral, barely. Main reactor is slag. Engines are gone. We're bleeding atmosphere from 30 decks. But life support is stable on the command levels. We're not going anywhere, but we're alive." "Good," Reed said. "That's good." A new alert chimed, soft and hesitant. "Admiral," Thorne said, his voice thick. "I'm picking up a signal, Vordrigan, but faint. It's an escape pod, a life pod, crystalline. It must have been launched just before the wave hit. It looks like it was shielded by the Harbinger's hull." Reed's eyes narrowed. "One survivor." "One, it's broadcasting a distress signal, a hegemony. Code of surrender." "It's Krylax, the second in command." There was a long, dangerous silence on the bridge. "Bring him in," Reed said. "Sir," Lena looked at him, shocked. After what he tried to do." "He's a prisoner of war, Commander, and he's the only one left who can tell the hegemony what happened here. He's not a combatant anymore, he's a message. Tractor him into Hangar Bay 2. Send a full Marine escort. I don't want any accidents." 2 hours later, Admiral Kalen Reed stood in the ruined, scorched expanse of Hangar Bay 2. The Indomitable was a tomb, the air cold and metallic. He stood without a pressure suit, the internal atmosphere just barely breathable. He wore his dress uniform, stained with soot and sweat, a piece of shrapnel still embedded in his left forearm, which he'd refused to have treated. The Vordrigan escape pod, a sleek obsidian teardrop, sat in the middle of the deck, steaming in the cold. Its hatch hissed open. Krylax, the Vordrigan arbiter adjunct, stepped out. He was unarmed. His crystalline skin, which should have been iridescent, was dull and cracked. The entropy wave had touched him, even in his shielded pod. He looked old, brittle. He stared at the human admiral, his multifaceted eyes unblinking, trying to process the being before him. He was surrounded by 6 Terran Marines in full combat armor, their rifles aimed squarely at his center mass. Krylax's telepathic voice, which had been a clear, resonant chime, was now a faint, fractured whisper in their minds. "Why?" Reed stepped forward, his boots crunching on the debris-strewn deck. "Why what, Arbiter Adjunct? Why are you alive? Or why are you here?" "Why did you do this?" Krylax gestured, his hand trembling at the hangar, the ship, the void. "This is not warfare. This is madness, chaos. You sacrificed your best, your flagship, your pilots." "We did," Reed said, his voice flat. "For what?" Krylax's voice was desperate. He needed to understand. His entire reality, his 5 centuries of Vordrigan logic had been shattered. "This system, has no tactical value. This nebula is resource poor. The hegemony would have left had you simply ceded the colony. You expended everything for nothing. Reed walked until he was standing just feet from the tall, alien being. He looked up at him, and Krylax saw the full, terrifying depth of human exhaustion and human resolve in his eyes. "You're right," Reed said softly. "The system has no value. The nebula has no value. This ship," he slapped the bulkhead of the Indomitable, "is just metal, all of it, expendable." He turned and pointed past Krylax, past the Marines, toward the hangar bay's force field which looked out onto the stars. Out there, faint and blue and perfect, was Odyssey Station. "You're a creature of logic, Krylax. You calculate, you measure. Tonnage, yield, vector, probability, you calculated everything, except us." Reed pointed to the station. 4.2 million people are on that station. They are not harmonious. They are loud. They are messy. They are arguing and drinking and falling in love and having children and making mistakes. They are living. That's not nothing. That's everything. "Sentiment," Krylax chimed, the word a telepathic sneer. "You doomed your fleet for sentiment. It is a biological flaw, a weakness." Reed let out a harsh, dry sound. It was the echo of his chuckle from that morning, but it was stripped of all humor. It was a sound of pure, bitter, terrible irony. "That's why you lost," Reed said. "That's why you're here and your arbiter is dust. You came here in ships of glass, Krylax. You were so convinced of your own perfection, your own logic. You were surprised when you met rock." He gestured to his own chest. "This flaw, this sentiment, this love, that's our armor. It's the armor you can't scan. It's the resonance you can't shatter. It's the reason a pilot, a child really, will fly her ship into a temporal singularity, not for tactical value, but to save the people she loves." Krylax stared, his mind finally, truly breaking. He could not compute a weapon he could not see. He could not fight an enemy that measured victory in lives saved, not ships destroyed. "You came here to contest our will," Reed said, turning away. "You challenged us, and you found out what our will is made of." He looked at the Marine sergeant. "Take him to the brig, treat him according to Terran law. He's a witness. The hegemony will want to know what happened at Kepler's Veil. He can tell them we're unharmonious, and we're waiting." As the Marines escorted the broken alien away, Reed walked to the edge of the force field. He looked out at the graveyard of the Vordrigan fleet and the shattered, heroic wreck of his own. Lena Hansen came to stand beside him. "Admiral, High Command is on the line. They're sending the First Fleet. They want a report." Reed nodded, not turning. Send them the sensor logs, send them everything." He paused, his throat tight. "And Commander, add a commendation for the 77th, for Commander Eva Rostova." What should the citation say, sir?" Reed watched the distant light of Odyssey Station, the home Eva would never see again. "It should say," he whispered, his voice thick, "she paid the rent. Tell them, Echo and Jester and all the 77th, they're home." He continued to stare into the void, a tired, broken, victorious man. The Vordrigan hegemony had challenged humanity, and humanity, through blood and sacrifice and a stubborn, illogical love, had answered. The arrogance of the galaxy's oldest empire had been met by the resilience of its youngest, and the laughter had been earned.